leaders, judges, and officials of Israel. Once they presented themselves before God, Joshua said to the whole assembly, "This is the word of the Holy One, the God of Israel. Long ago, your ancestors, including Terah, the father of Abraham, and Nahor, lived beyond the Euphrates and worshipped other gods. But I took your ancestors, Sarah and Abraham, from the land beyond the Euphrates and led them through the entire region of Canaan. I made Sarah and Abraham's descendants numerous. There was Isaac, and to Rebekah and Isaac I gave Jacob and Esau. To Esau I assigned the hill country of Seir, while Jacob and his family went down to Egypt." Joshua then said, "I now call upon you to revere and serve the Holy One completely and sincerely. Cast off the gods that your ancestors worshipped beyond the Euphrates and in Egypt, and worship the Holy One alone. If you do not want to worship the Holy One, then make the decision today whom you will worship, even if it is the gods of the Amorites in whose country you live. As for me and my household, we will worship the Holy One." Our second reading is from Ecclesiastes. "There is a time for everything, a season for every purpose under heaven. A season to be born and a season to die. A season to plant and a season to harvest. A season to hurt and a season to heal. A season to tear down and a season to build up. A season to cry and a season to laugh. A season to mourn and a season to dance. A season to scatter stones and a season to gather them. A season for holding close and a season for holding back. A season to seek and a season to lose. A season to keep and a season to throw away. A season to tear and a season to mend. A season to be silent and a season to speak. A season to love and a season to hate. A season for hostilities and a season for peace." Ancient words from our tradition for today's present-day understanding.
Again, remember, Maverick is the star of the day, so whatever he does is on the agenda. People who know me, that I in relationship with, understand that I'm conflict avoidant. I don't like conflict, which, if you didn't know that personally, you would assume that people at St. Andrews like conflict and like getting involved in political struggles and this kind of thing. That's the farthest thing from the truth. But the fact is that right now, a lot of people in our nation are being attacked by the Christian church. And they're attacking those people in our name. And so our silence is falsely understood as consent, as agreement. I believe the time for silence among progressive Christians is way over. And that we need to be on the rooftops shouting on subjects like the one we're going to talk about today, which I'm not going to get specific, so don't worry that children will be traumatized. But we're going to talk about choice. I remember the first time I talked about this, we had a crisis pregnancy center at the church when I first got here. If you can imagine, much more conservative church. And when I realized I had to come out as pro-choice, my mouth was dry. I physically remember my tongue sticking to the top of my mouth. I remember not being sure if I would have a job after that was over. It's hard to imagine us now as a reproductive justice church, that being the case, but the journey we've been through has been really incredible and one of change. But the state we live in has not gone through that kind of change. The Texas legislature, every session, unleashes an attack, an assault on the sovereignty of women over themselves. And again, people think that is the voice of the church. The church, in many ways, has been the worst enemy through history that women have had. And we need to change that fundamentally and permanently. I can say that as a person who, for all intents and purposes, was once pro-life. I was a fan of Albert Schweitzer as a teenager, and I developed the kind of fantasy that I could live without any kind of conflict, without any hard choices. I would be vegetarian, which I pulled off, but that's only the tip of the iceberg. Both Albert Schweitzer, I loved his reverence of life. He saw hippopotami trying to cross the river and struggling for life. He said that's the essence of all ethics, the struggle to live. So the reverence for life became what he thought was the foundation of ethics. And both he and Gandhi said that life is the highest value, which I don't disagree with, but the problem was both he and Gandhi and all of my heroes were men. And they didn't understand the complexity of what they were calling life. I didn't understand the complexity. I didn't understand that life is a continuum, that it develops, that life struggles against life. See, that's life in the real world. The life I believed in could have been drawn by Disney. Like each individual person, there was nothing ecological about it. Nothing real world about it. And what I didn't realize I was asking women to do is to reduce their complicated situations to the simplistic interpretation of my mind. Because as a male, I couldn't figure out. I mean, I'd never become pregnant out of wedlock. Why can't everybody be like me? See, I didn't understand that I was the problem. And we have these nebulous words like life. At the inception of pregnancy, yes, we're talking about life, but every organic being is life. And we say words like unborn. It's not just that it's unborn, but when it's ungestated. Like each year I talk about my book, but until I write the book, that's a contradiction in terms. An unwritten book is a contradiction in terms. Right? An unbuilt house or an ungestated baby is a contradiction in terms. And the reason that is important is because it's happening in another person. If pregnancy happened in a petri dish, then we would all be pro-life. But it happens in an actual person with complicated situations in a complicated world. I loved, there was I think it's a preacher, I'm not sure, who wrote something on the idea of the unborn. His name is Dave Bonhart from St. Junia, I think that's how you say it, United Methodist Church. He's writing about the unborn. One of the big mysteries for me, after I started seeing through my own arrogance, was how little some people help real babies in the real world. This is his looking at that nebulous word. He says, the unborn, in quotes, are a convenient group of people to advocate for. They never make demands of you. They are morally uncomplicated, unlike the incarcerated, addicted, or the chronically poor. They don't resent your condescension or complain that you're not politically correct. Unlike widows, they don't ask you to question patriarchy. Unlike orphans, they don't need money, education, or child care. Unlike aliens, they don't bring all that racial, cultural, and religious baggage that you dislike. They allow you to feel good about yourself without any work at creating or maintaining relationships. And when they are born, you can forget about them because they cease to be unborn. It's almost as if by being born, they have died to you. You can love the unborn and advocate for them without substantially challenging your own wealth, power, or privilege, without reimagining social structures, apologizing, or making reparations to anyone. They are, in short, the perfect people to love if you want to claim to love Jesus, but you actually dislike people who breathe. Now, to me, that's bingo, right? It has amazed me over the decades and decades how little help pro-life politicians have brought to neonatal care, or education, or welfare for women who do choose to keep a child, or making adoption less of a zoo. That passage in Scripture we heard, to everything there is a purpose. There's a time for every purpose under heaven. Why does that? It's almost a cliche, but it makes us relax. It's a recognition that legalism and literalism are not always possible in the real world. That no matter what your intentions, there are times when you're going to have to make tough choices. And a lot of times you can't choose between pure good and pure evil. You're trying to make the best of bad circumstances. And the last thing any Christian should be doing is making you feel worse. In Scripture, choice is pictured as a very important part of what it means to be a human being. When we have the mythology of the tree of life, if it was literally true, it'd be the dumbest story of all time, where a God who supposedly was smart would put a temptation in the middle of the garden and say you can eat from any other tree but this one. Right? This is the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Don't eat that one. Everything else is yours. Who wouldn't have seen that one coming? It's a parable. It's a parable. Mark Twain used to say if God had been smart, he or she would have made the snake forbidden, and then Adam would have eaten the snake, and there wouldn't be a problem. It's a parable. It's a teaching parable. And the same thing happens when Israel is passing into the promised land. And Joshua stops them and says, you need to choose whether you want to do this or not. Before you can go into the promised land, you have to take responsibility for your choices. The promised land cannot be given to you. If I lead you into the promised land, somebody else can lead you back out of it. You have to make your own choices. You have to take responsibility for your own life. Again, if pregnancy took place in a petri dish if there was like a seesaw where there was a woman on this side and a fully gestated infant on the other side, it would be easy most of the time. But that's not the situation. Unlike any other situation ethically that I know of or can think of, one life is developing within another life. There's nothing like that in a man's experience. Even if you say life is the ultimate value, one life is developing inside another life. You have potential life within gestated life, within a person. And I would say the church has never recognized the moral agency of women. And as long as you dehumanize the woman by projecting humanity on the inception of pregnancy, women will not be respected. Their bodies will not belong to themselves. They will be the common breeding stock of a patriarchal culture. When pregnancy takes place, because one life is in another life, you have to decide which is the context for the other. Is a woman the context of pregnancy? Or is pregnancy the context of women? If you have to choose, one of those is the context. Now, when I first started working with survivors of rape, which is what woke me up to the problem of how I was looking at the world, I had all these simple ideas of ways the law could decide what's good and what's evil for women in their journeys. And I met survivor after survivor who blew me away with possibilities I never would have thought of in a million years. Things happen in the real world that don't happen in the simplistic imagination of a male. One day I came to work. As I say, for a while I was just conflicted. I hated politics. I didn't think there's any place for politics in the pulpit, believe it or not. Because I was clueless, right? I'm a white male, educated, so I don't want to see my privilege. Right? When you're not political, what that means is you're white male, heterosexual. You fit in the power hierarchy in a way that you can't feel. That's what it means when you're not political. Ask your servants how they feel about that. But the preschool director calls me in and says, we got a problem. Our crisis pregnancy center lied to this woman to get her to come in. She's already got 4 or 5 children, I forget which. Her doctor said she will die if she continues with the pregnancy and leave the children without a mother. And our crisis pregnancy center told her that she was going to murder her baby. Where's the sideline? Right? There is no sideline with that. There is no innocence. Either the pregnancy is the context of the woman or the woman is the context of the pregnancy. Little things help me understand. There was a sign on the desk of the Battered Women's Center in Austin. It was a receptionist's desk, and it said, "Love is when you want me to be who I am. Abuse is when you want me to be who you want me to be." And I got it. Love is when you want me to be who I am. Abuse is when you want me to be who you want me to be. You want to project these male fantasies, but then you don't want to take responsibility for the complicated world that I live in. Through much of history, women have been property to men. That needs to be remembered when we have these conversations. That it's not an accident that these decisions are being made by patriarchal groups of males. Maybe it'll be a woman standing up front, but you see the guys behind that wrote the laws. It's no coincidence that the denominations that don't believe that a woman should have the right to choose also don't believe she should be ordained. Does that sound like a coinky-dink to you? I remember I was reading Texas Monthly one time, and it had on one side of the page the 100 best right-to-life voters, and on the other side the 100 worst people in supporting children. And guess what? It was the same people. How clear does the pattern have to be before you realize? Being pro-choice does not mean being pro-abortion. It means recognizing the moral agency of women. It means supporting them if they want to terminate the pregnancy. It means supporting them possibly with welfare for 18 years, 20 years. It means giving them free birth control. It means recognizing that the woman is the only person who can make the decision, because the woman is the only person who understands it from the inside out. And as smart and as wonderful as the Texas legislature is, as Oz-like as they are in their munificent wisdom, even they cannot figure out what a pregnancy means and what resources are available. No one loves children more than pro-choice women. No one. No one is going to show up for neonatal care. No one is going to volunteer to take care of the children like pro-choice women. I'm so glad we got to have a baptism. I'm not sure if y'all are happy with that, but because it is a celebration of life as it really is. And the real options that people have, trying to get along the best they can. When it's good timing, you celebrate it and you sing songs and you sing with joy. But for everything, there's a season. There's a time for every purpose under heaven, and sometimes the time isn't right. And shaming somebody in that situation is the very least Christ-like thing we can do. I'll never forget when Ann Richards, being a pro-choice clergy decades ago, there weren't a whole lot of us on the team. So I kind of got to be a fly on the wall at all kinds of meetings. When Ann Richards was elected, I was invited to the party at the apartment. And one of her closest friends was in the lobby crying. This is the night that she won. And I said, "What? I don't understand, what is wrong?" And she said, "I'm just realizing that now that abortion is safe, we can turn all of our focus on reducing teen pregnancy." That's a pro-choice woman. No dentist likes root canals. Nobody likes abortion per se. If pregnancy happened in absentia, it would be easy and simple. But it's not. And so Scripture tells us a story of decisions, hard decisions. It tells us there's a time for life and there's a time for death. As painful as that is, we didn't design the complexity of biological choices. Women did not design this system. They're just trying to do the best they can with the options that are available. St. Anselm of Canterbury said, "Without grace, no one can be saved, but without free will, there's nothing worth saving." Choice is so important that the Scripture puts it in at the most pivotal times. This has to be your life, and you have to take responsibility. And that's a good thing. So I believe that what we are seeing in our world today is the setting sun of patriarchy, homophobia, racism, classism. All of those things are a setting sun. But in the meantime, the advocators of oppression are cashing in their chips. And they're lashing out everywhere they possibly can. This is not a time for Christians to be silent. This is a time for us to be a light to the world. I wrote a thing this morning that I'm not sure about. You can probably do better for yourself, but I just sort of wrote a credo for myself as a pro-choice Christian. I am a pro-choice Christian. While I hold life to be of ultimate value, honesty demands that I also recognize that in pregnancy, unlike any other ethical situation, one life is developing within another life. I believe women are the context of pregnancy, not pregnancy the context of women. I recognize the scientific fact that life develops in a continuum, and the ethical fact that life is complicated. I affirm, as Scripture says, there's a time for every purpose under heaven, including at times abortion. By choice, I do not necessarily mean the choice of abortion. I'm affirming my trust in the moral agency of women, whether that means giving birth, terminating a pregnancy, or seeking out adoptive parents. I affirm a hope that the sun is setting on the long, painful era of patriarchal religion, that a new age is dawning, where it is recognized that a woman's most personal decisions should be made not by the church, not by the state, but by the sacred conscience and moral agency of women themselves. I believe that choice is part of what it means to be human, and so women have not only the right, but the responsibility to make their own ethical decisions. For better or worse, we were born in a prophetic time. We were born into a time when the new is being born very dangerously. It's vulnerable. As people of faith, our silence at this time is unacceptable. We need to get up and shout from the rooftops that we affirm the moral agency of women. I invite you now to your own reflection on these words.